Okay, I'm live.
Okay, so on the screen is the first podcast I want to discuss. You should be able to see the other stream I want to discuss, Dara's stream. So these are the two. They're a contrast. And why they're a contrast is because one of them doesn't engage at all with the first important market segment, political market segmentation, which is the innovators. Now, the innovators, in terms of Irish nationalism, Irish populism, are the type of people who are watching this video, the type of people on Telegram and the Irish Telegram groups, the type of people who were Gran Torino, members of the political parties. Unfortunately, I can't. Okay, yeah, there we go. Yeah, National Party, IFP, Ireland First members. There were about 20,000 people voted for those parties at the last election. That's about 1% of the total Irish electorate. In terms of that number of innovators, dyed in the wool anti-establishment populists has probably increased a multiple of times since COVID, 2-3 times. So that's why we're saying maybe 2.5%. This is the 2.5% dyed in the wool anti-establishment populists. Mainly national populists, some are more centrist populists, and I'll even give a byball to left-wing populists, certain left-wing populists, maybe of the old left, out of a certain amount of sympathy, empathy for those people. But they probably need to upgrade their ideas a little bit. Anyway, we can still form some sort of anti-establishment populist alliance with them, but it's mainly going to be national populists. Okay, right, so let's get started. Okay, so the point I'm making is that the audience of the podcasts, is it talking here? And is there any invitation for action to try and get these people? I don't know if my mouse is visible. I'll see when I get the, when I watch back. I might have to switch over to my PowerPoint slides, but we'll give this a go anyway. Let's see what happens if we go backwards and forwards there. Yeah, you can. I've put up videos of this stuff recently on my channel, so you'll be able to get the copy from there. I've made them short, like about 5 or 10 minutes each, so you can just like get the ideas of this market segmentation, the adoption curve for the uptake of new ideas. Comes from product marketing, and I've taken my lead from somebody I follow over in the UK. I've applied it to the uptake of Irish nationalism, and it says that a new idea to take root has to go through certain stages. From left to right, it will go from the innovators to the early adopters, and it can't get to the early majority until the majority of the early adopters, until there's enough early adopters. It can't get. Now we're at the stage now where we can go from innovator to early adopter. We can take the next tranche because we've got enough people. We've hit the 2.5%, and that, for me, tell me if I'm wrong. You know, join the discussion, make a comment. The important thing is to get to the next slice in the pie. The next slice in the pie in the market segmentation, or the political market segmentation, would give us about 15%. And we know from the work, from looking at last year's, 2020's election results, 10% of the electorate is enough to get a TD elected. So we don't need 50%. We don't, you know, we're just going to the next step to get a TD elected from one of those parties that I mentioned, or a decent independent, or a new party. And it's entirely plausible, as I've said in one of my recent videos. Okay, so let's go to the streams, and let's talk about John's stream on Offgrid Islands. Now, I made a comment of hopefully I gave some positive and some negative. 20 minutes in, and no solutions or strategy unless you count some vague advice to communicate clearly. So, I mean, I do rate John. I've met John. I think John's a great speaker. However, we need to get people like John and people like Offgrid Islands thinking in terms of this political. Who is the audience that is listening to the podcast, and what can they realistically do? The argument I'm making is that we really want people in the second segment to be listening to the podcast, because people in the first segment already know this content. They know this stuff. There it is. The problem is that the audience who needs to hear John's message isn't listening in here. It's not listening to any of our stuff, so we need a way to reach them, and it's not going to be through YouTube or Telegram, possibly through Twitter. We can talk more about that. Okay. Is to reach the next section, which would be the early adopters. Yeah, so that's my issue with this podcast. I agree with everything he said, but he's missing an opportunity, because we really need to activate the innovators as activists and figure out how we're going to reach the early adopters. That's the job to do. That's the most important job we need to be focused on. Tell me if I'm wrong, and tell me if you disagree. I'm going to assume we didn't hear anything, so let's go back to 35 minutes. I've listened to the first 35, as I say, and my comments underneath on that YouTube video of John's on Offgrid Islands. Yeah.
I can't believe I'm gobsmacked every day. I wake up and can this not be a dream? Please let this be a dream. It has to be. What are these people doing now? What hold does the American government have over these people that they can convince them to speak such nonsense against their own people and do such appalling things to them? What have they done? What secrets do they nurture that they can be compelled to do these appalling things to their own people?
But that's what I would wonder. Someone put out the suggestion that Leo was he was a young, what do you call it, an intern over in Congress in the United States. So you wouldn't know what a compromat, as the Russians say, they have on him from his time over there as an intern.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. And the problem is we look at their actions and they don't in any way equate with a representative of the Irish people elected by a democratic franchise and mandated to carry out actions and policies congruent with the welfare of the Irish people. It's quite the opposite, the absolute opposite. I mean, if this was an occupying enemy, of course, if this was like, I don't know, if these were like Nazis, or if they were, Soviet troops with tanks like they came into Prague in '68, if that's what was here now, doing this, well, we'd say, well, okay, it's terrible, it's awful, but they are invading us, and we have to just either defeat them, and we would have no doubt about it, the morality of it. But to actually have our own leaders, our own politicians, our own political class in its entirety, like all to one or two men, women, I think, now, there's probably 2, 3 who have put up some form of spirit of resistance in the last 3 years to this. But the rest of it is overwhelmingly on the same side, and it is entirely in favour of putting the jackboot on the face of the Irish people.
Okay, John's fantastic. John is a great orator, makes a great case, but he's not reaching the audience that we need him to reach. Why am I working? Okay, so yeah, okay, so John, these are the people here. These people in the second group are the people John needs to be reaching. All we need to somehow get John's message into these people. But all these broadcasts to Offgrid Islands on YouTube channels that have got limited, because YouTube keeps us in a digital gulag, are only reaching these people. And I'd say like half of us could probably recite these points that John is making by heart at this stage of the game. So really, all his effort is going, in a sense, is being wasted, because it's going in here, and it really needs to go in here. And then after these people come on board and listen to the likes of John's and Dara's arguments, etc., then a certain amount of these people will start to come on board as well. By that stage, it's game over for the establishment. But how do we break out? This audience, this message of John's is going in here into a digital echo chamber where everybody knows this stuff. You enjoy listening. Well, I'm sort of like a bit fed up of listening, because I think there's something else, some other work we need to be doing, which is to figure out how we get our message to this group of people. You know what? I think I've made my point. I'm going to take a break because my head's wrecked jumping around between these screens. Thanks for watching. It's helped me find out a little bit about how these features of StreamYard work. Good night, be all right.